Come, spell weavers, reavers, rogues, and men-at-arms, and answer the call of adventure. Pick up your sword, your axe, your spellbook, your bow, your rulebook, and your dice, and join the forces of good in their eternal fight against vile monsters, conspiring min-maxers, horny bards, and blood-soaked murder hobos. Discover the treasure trove of role-playing games here on Rollin Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Good evening, Boneheads, and welcome back to Rollin Bones with Ryan Howard, where we are making old school young again. I'm your host and king of the Boneheads, Ryan Howard, and I'm really excited about tonight. This one is going to be a lot of fun. I've got two guys who they're great content creators here on YouTube. They are just a couple of great guys to hang out with, and they have released what looks like a monumental ShadowDark supplement called the Shucked Oyster. I am, of course, talking about our good friends over at Black Lodge Games. Both young Steve and Ginger Frazier are here in the house tonight, and we are going to be talking all about their Kickstarter campaign, which has been funded within the first 24 hours of being live. Funded and goal completely blown out of the water, which is going to be awesome. These guys deserve it. They've worked really hard on this thing, and I can't wait to bring them on to talk about it. So before I bring the boys on here, I want to remind everyone to like, share, and subscribe. That's the best way that you can support Rollin Bones, and what we do here is just to give us a little bump in the algorithm. And of course, I remind everyone that you can find me on various social media platforms, including X and Instagram, where I am at Howard_Ryan Gregg. YouTube is Rollin Bones. Twitch is twitch.tv/RollinBonesRyan. And Substack is rollinbones.substack.com. There will be an article going up on Substack here either the end of this week or the middle of next week, where I will be talking all about melee dueling, and give you guys kind of my rule set for adding melee duels into D20 based system. So, I think that'll be cool. I think that'll get a lot of utility, kind of, break everyone out of the mold of just roll attack ad infinitum. I like to think that I can make it a little bit more interesting than that. But that's enough of my stuff. Let's go ahead and bring on the guys that you all are here to see. They are Black Lodge Games on X and on YouTube. So let's welcome back to the show, Black Lodge Games boys. How y'all doing?
Good.
What's happening, man?
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having us on, man.
Yeah, thank you, man.
No problem at all. And real quick, before we get too far in, I'm going to go ahead and drop the link to the campaign here in chat for anyone who hasn't already backed it.
And thank you so much to everyone who has.
Yeah, this has been
wild.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, this thing, you guys strapped a rocket to this damn thing. Like, your goal was initially $2,500, and we are sitting here right now at $9,628.
Yeah, the obligatory, it's over 9,000.
Yes. Yep. Vegeta has pledged.
Yeah,
indeed.
Cool. So, real quick, like just to start things off, and kind of let people know some of the background that you've told us about in Basic Experts Gilded Server. This project kind of mutated and evolved beyond what you initially had set out to do.
Is many times way more. Yeah. It really snowballed, because we had made a ShadowDark versus OSE video, and we were going to kind of compare and contrast those, and we really ended up not wanting to talk about OSE. We were just coming up with what's the intro, some little funny ShadowDark story. What's it like to be a ShadowDark character?
Mm-hmm.
And that ended up being so much more interesting to us than the video that we had planned. So we just made a 6 or 7 minute video of telling this wild story. And Nick came up with this brothel called the Shucked Oyster, because it's like, where does this guy go next? All right, he's running from his bookie because he owes him
Where's
money.
he going? Obviously to the whorehouse.
He's going to the whorehouse. Yeah.
Yep.
And then from there, it like we laughed so much that, we just couldn't get the idea out of our head, and it just continued. So I was like, you know what? Let's just make this like a small thing. It'll just be a PDF. It'll be like 20 pages, 30 pages. And then we'll
get drop in location, a couple of NPCs.
NPCs. And then it just kept snowballing and growing and growing.
Even we could not resist the call of the Shucked Oyster.
Yeah.
We're just along for the ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how that happens. You set out to make what you think is going to be a small project, and then 150 pages later,
here we are.
Right.
Yeah. But that was the thing. It's like the same thing that inspired that video unexpectedly. That has been like the core. That's been the axis on which all the other stuff that's been added, all the other characters, the items, all the locations, the things going on, the history.
Yeah.
It's all sort of come unexpectedly or quasi unexpectedly, but all from that same starting point of this wild place where just things continue to happen, unexpected, chaotic things, but all of them interesting.
Yeah. And this might not be the best sales pitch at the moment, but my players, through circumstances having completed one of the dungeons, ended up with something extraordinarily powerful. And they used it in a way that we hadn't accounted for.
That made it way exponentially more powerful than we had
more powerful
intended.
And my if anyone had seen our interview with our friend Evan, our last podcast episode, he's like a min-maxer rules lawyer like you wouldn't believe, and he has basically said that the game is going to be over after this weekend or shortly afterward, because
we'll see.
He did what he has said is the most insane rules lawyering possible. He contacted McCreese
again,
which
he's done several times. McCreese has taken his side on every single one of them.
Taken his side and said, yes, this is valid.
We're running it next.
Laughing like crazy. So the Shucked Oyster may have destroyed my Axe campaign.
Something tells me
Shucked Oyster to be destroyed again and again.
It was just for the Shucked Oyster to burn down, but apparently it's burned down my whole campaign. So, which is awesome.
I can only imagine that McCreese will take every opportunity to just like throw gasoline on the raging inferno of autism.
Apparently when Evan ran us by McCreese, his response was all caps.
Over and over again.
So thank you, McCreese.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Creators and players teaming up to make a GM have to smoke 15 cigarettes in a row.
Cigarettes and game masters, the most oppressed people.
Smokers and game masters.
But something that's really interesting to me about this is the choice of ShadowDark. And I know like ShadowDark is a big deal right now. It's kind of the game du jour out there. Especially with all those Annie wins, it practically swept the damn award show. But
that was pretty fortuitous.
Absolutely.
It's and well deserved, but it was. I forgot about Gen Con, so we didn't plan to.
We didn't plan. We didn't have
that it's going to win all these Ennies right before our
we don't have
goes out.
A red telephone to Kelsey or to anybody else. But it really was the reason we chose it was because, again, completely unexpected. We did this video, which we realized we didn't want to do at all. Like, truly discovered that ShadowDark has a very compelling, drive to it, a very compelling vision of what it is, and what kind of personality a player character in that world is. Someone who's going to the dungeon, coming back. They're not investing it.
Yeah.
They're not spending their money wisely.
They're blowing all of their
blowing it
cash.
all on carousing outcomes. They're getting drunk. They're getting high. They're getting blackout drunk, going on benders, waking up with all these complications and more experience than they went to bed with. But now they're penniless.
Yeah.
And so now what do? Well, I got to go back to the dungeon because I have no job prospects and I have no money. Like, okay.
So that part of it was really appealing to us. And then as we started really kind of digging into it, and like I went through a lot of the different systems for, like generating hexes and towns and dungeons and things like that. We used all of those, all of the procedures in the ShadowDark book to populate our dungeons. It doesn't include a town because the idea is you drop this into your own town, but went through and I made a couple of towns using this, and it was really fun. And I was like, this is really good.
It all makes sense. It's very usable.
It's super usable. There's no fat. And I think the dungeon generating rules are on just a 2-page spread. It's so awesome.
It was very we have 2 dungeons in the Shucked Oyster. They're pretty big dungeons. They're not mega dungeons like, Rapana Thuk. They're not 187 rooms, but
I think each one has 19 rooms.
Yeah, I think they both have 19 rooms in them.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And it was very, very seamless, very easy.
Yeah.
And
it's varied on what you get too.
And varied, but funny how it all works. Like all the results, they all made sense.
Yeah. So she took, I think, probably a lot of inspiration. I'm not super experienced with the AD&D DMG, but I imagine that was inspiration for a lot of this. And she took a lot of what's a little inscrutable sometimes from AD&D and that kind of tradition, and really boiled it down to something very simple, which is not easy to do.
Yeah, and again, not only simple, contrasting to OSC, made it very simple, but evocative at the same time. There's no explicit setting in ShadowDark.
Yeah.
But the art, even the layout, but like the way things are presented in that book, is able to walk that line of both. I don't even want to say streamlining. It really is distilling what is memorable, but maintaining a very palpable feel to it that is engaging.
And Calvinoni in chat here. Good, no need for a mega dungeon. Somewhere Greg Gillespie just felt a spike of rage and he doesn't know why. But no, the reason why I bring this up, what we have here, and this is something that's become kind of unfortunately very rare when it comes to communities popping up around specific games. You have a supplement that truly is like a supplement to something that exists in the game. You've taken a concept in ShadowDark, this idea of between adventures, you are doing stupid things to lose all of your money.
Yeah.
Kind of like Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, or even Conan, to draw from Appendix N. But you guys are taking that core concept and giving it a life of its own, so that people who want to flesh out that side of things have a place to turn. You really have built something modular to add on to ShadowDark that fits naturally with pieces that are already there.
Yeah. And that was really kind of the big thing was we wanted this. This is not a, hey, we're going to, run through the Caves of Chaos tonight, or we're going to do this module tonight.
Right.
It's something that you just put there and it kind of sits there. And over time, it's meant to be kind of looped into everything else that you're doing. And so Tora, I'm not sure if he's there in the chat right now. It doesn't look like it, but he's been playtesting it. Rex Teal, I think, is in his game. And they had gone through several sessions of interacting with parts of the Shucked Oyster, had never been to the brothel. I I think they were on their way to go there and it burned down. But they were like, oh man, so like, were any of the dungeons that we've gone to from the Shucked Oyster? And he's like, no,
you haven't been.
You haven't found them yet.
You
So
haven't even set foot in there.
Yeah, and so I was just like, oh yes, this is exactly what we wanted. It's this is not something like, oh yeah, we're gonna go like hone in and like play this module today. It's like it's gonna. You don't even need to tell your players that it's there. They'll just find it. And somehow they'll be drawn into it. It's awesome.
And because it's built up, it's made out of the Shucked Oyster is made out of characters, right?
Yes.
Because that's what it is, and not an event per se or a MacGuffin per se solely. It's always going to be there. The characters are doing stuff while you're out in the dungeon. When you come back, things change. Is it a couple of days? Is it a couple of weeks? Who knows? And again, because ShadowDark has this carousing mechanic where players are mechanically incentivized to go to places, to carouse, to drink, to party. This is it's more than just, it's not like a gimmick, or it's not simply a piece of flavor to add spice to your town. Although that's certainly good, and that's fine. But it really is sort of maintaining the core dynamic of kind of what you're supposed to do, or what you should be thematically driven to do in ShadowDark. So your players want to find these places where they can party.
Yeah. And it is very much like the carousing table in ShadowDark gives oftentimes ends up giving you like new adventure hooks and new situations like that. I think and I could be wrong about this, but the highest outcome that you could possibly get if you rolled the highest, got the maximum 14 or whatever it is, then it's like you wake up after having blacked out and you're in some local lord's manor having stolen a magic item, and you have to but you got 6 extra experience points, and so it's like find your way out now. And so there's all of these things that can happen, and so we tried to tailor ours to no, it's this specific location. Something happens, like you can like gain an ally or an enemy from among like the list of the patrons of the oyster. You can learn something about one of the secrets going on. There's and every single little thing that you do in town interacting with all these NPCs affects how the rest of the town and the rest of the people there are
right, because the NPCs have feelings about the other NPCs,
and they have like secret agendas, and they hate each other, and like it's really, really great. Like
completely blown out of proportion hatred.
Petty and
so when they see you interacting positively or negatively with these other people who have jobs and they're around town, they're like, oh, that guy he talked to, or that chick, she talked to Gaston. What's that about?
Yeah, or like it's so great because there's certain people where it's like, if you harm this person, some other character is going to hate you. You're now their enemy. They're going to come after you. But if you help some other character is going to hate you guts for that. Like there's
we hate him too.
Yeah, it's this crazy network. So like no game will ever play out the same way between different groups, and this was so validating with the playtesting. Is every person who's actually tried this has come
the course of
radically different outcomes. It's taking the game in very different directions, which is awesome.
Couple of comments here that I started as we were going through there. Victor Gorchev, Kelsey is a real one, and I'm not saying that to simp. Like at this point, I think Kelsey's talent speaks for itself. Like there's no need to even say I'm not simping. Like
no, but she's a genuinely very good person. That's right. No, we all met her at the same time at North Texas. She was wonderful. Yeah,
absolutely, she was. And then Rex Teal says that he's planning to combine Guts and Glory with the Shucked Oyster.
Nice. We were saying that beforehand, before we started.
Just Rex, to give you a little preview of what will happen when you do that. In Nighthaven, the brothels are run. They're basically a syndicate. It's kind of like Sin City, where the hookers in Sin City all like banded together basically to keep the mafia out and to keep the cops out. That's kind of the way that things are in Nighthaven. There's a syndicate called the Scarlet Order that runs all of the brothels. And so if something like the Shucked Oyster happens and one of the brothels catches fire, immediately you're going to have whoever the Scarlets have hired to like be their bodyguards, whatever gangs want to assert their dominance over that. There's a gang called the Knave Syndicate that handles gambling, that works hand in hand with the Scarlets, that'll be all over it. So yeah, as soon as you drop that match in the Shucked Oyster, things are going to immediately kick off.
Yeah, this honestly, this would work. You could change one small detail in the Shucked Oyster to make this work perfectly.
Yes.
Because there's some things going on underneath the floorboards of the Shucked Oyster that would fit very, very well with that.
Yeah.
But you guys have stumbled upon similar ideas that I've been playing around with in Nighthaven, at just that connection there that Rex made and that you guys made with the work that I've been doing, kind of like reinforces this point. But a few weeks back, you guys made a video talking about how RPGs should be like soap operas. And for anyone who didn't watch that video, one, you should watch that video as soon as the stream is over. Go watch it. It's fantastic. It's on their Kickstarter page.
Yep.
It's kind of the skeleton key to this whole concept. But the idea here is you have parties with their own interests in what's going on in a given location. And as you interact with those parties, you're inevitably going to start knocking dominoes over, whether you mean to or not. Just by associating with one side, you will make another side distrust you. These are the kind of things that I want to see adventures turn into, instead of these like Dragonlance style here's a plot that you're going to like drag your characters through like they're in a mine cart. I prefer, here's a dungeon to explore if you find it. Here's some other stuff that you can do, and then here's a whole bunch of factions all interacting in and around this one event, this one location, whatever it is. And now your players are entering this essentially adventuring zone that is completely open to them. And who are they going to make mad? Who's going to end up shooting at them, and who's going to end up coming to their rescue when they get shot at?
Yeah, here's a world, and here are people who exist in that world. They existed before the players got there or before the session started. If the NPCs are lucky, they'll still be around.
Yeah.
After the players come rolling through, but they all have their own loves, hates, prejudices, expectations, misconceptions.
If your NPCs are lucky and they're not brought into a game with our players, then, because they usually we had there was one time where we were playing, I think, Wretched Epoch, and afterwards the players were all like, man, it's like, I don't even know what's going on in this game. And I was like, it's because you keep killing everyone. and they're like, yeah, like what's the story that you had planned here? I was like, first of all, there's no story.
Yeah. And if there was, there's certainly one now.
Not one now. But I was like, that's not how I do it. It's that, I come up with characters that have like personalities and motivations and goals, and then you guys kill them. And that's the end of it.
And what's funny is there are definitely a lot of people in and around the Shucked Oyster who would not fare well against murder hobo player characters, but there are some who, if your players have a mind, may find it difficult.
Oh, I mean, there's this isn't like a spoiler because it's in the random encounter table, but it is possible through a random encounter that you might just run into a legendary monster in the brothel. So it's like this is not a balanced module at all.
Nope,
There's
it's just
the
this
things,
is a place
things
and
that
the
are
people in
there
it.
are there, and they're scary sometimes. And there's all sorts
Just
of
like in real life. You
just
go
like in
to
real
a
life.
bar,
Yeah.
there might be a guy who's way tougher than you,
Yeah.
and you would be a fool to pick a fight with them.
But there's just I don't know where I was going with this, but it's been a long day.
Yeah.
For everyone out there, but it's a lot of fun, and there's so much weird shit that can happen.
And because, like you said, all of the different people who have play tested the game have had wildly different events happen.
Yes.
And even us who wrote the Shucked Oyster.
Oh my god, yeah.
Could not have anticipated
Some of the stuff that's come out of it.
So much of what happened in
our game.
In our game, it's incredibly validating because while the events have all been wildly different, everybody has given really heartening feedback.
Yeah,
it's
really
like
good
it's working.
feedback.
Like, okay.
Yeah, in one of the updates on the Kickstarter, there we linked Lord Mateus's blog that he did about his solo play with it, and it was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing that you described there, of like running into a legendary monster in the bar through random encounters, it reminds me of two things immediately. One is the David Cronenberg movie, A History of Violence.
Yes. Yeah. You walk into the cafe and
and the other one is the video game Max Payne 3.
Yeah.
Have you guys played Max Payne 3?
Yeah, we had someone when I got down during our rave stream earlier, down to a wife beater and sunglasses. Someone looked like I was gonna head down to the favela. So
yeah. But the during the flashback where he's in the bar in New Jersey, and then the kid's causing a scene, and he ends up shooting him, and he finds out that kid's a mobster's kid.
Yeah.
And basically ends up killing the entire Italian mafia.
Again.
That, like, these are the kinds of things that this kind of play style creates, in that, you run into someone and you murder hobo, the loud bar patron, or even just the rando on the street, and through circumstances, through rolling on tables, through whatever it is that your module or your rule system is set up, you could end up, hey, you killed a lord's son.
Yeah.
Right.
Or you accidentally killed a wanted criminal. Congratulations. Here's a giant reward, and now everyone thinks you're a legendary hero.
Yeah. Both of which could be very bad or very good.
Depending on how you
play it. Yeah. Yeah, no, that is to me so much more interesting. That this is like the one of the very cool things that role-playing games allow you to do that other things just can't. Baldur's Gate had a lot of smoke and mirrors. Love that game. But it had a lot of smoke and mirrors, but it's still, there's boundaries that you can't cross past, and role-playing games don't have those. And so it's your imagination. If you can tease out the kind of logical consequences, the second and third order effects of things, then it's the game's going to be just awesome. And it sounds like this is how Nighthaven's been designed too, which is like awesome. That means you're absolutely made something amazing. But that is exactly how we tried to make this, because it really is. It's about like, let's create some chaos. Let's create a lot of chaos, a lot of really weird chaos.
Right.
And see where your game goes as a result of that.
And also to make the towns interesting. Everybody knows that the D&D sort of dynamic is a dungeon delve, a dungeon crawl, but especially in a game like ShadowDark, which has these explicit player-facing mechanics of carousing, that implies a need to, world build and flesh out that area of the world as well, where your players are going to spend some time in the town, in the city, in the village.
And it shouldn't just be like stopping at the gas station,
Exactly.
you know, to like fill up on hit points.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, what this seems to be doing, and this is again something that I've tried to do with Nighthaven. When you go back into town, when you go carousing, in a lot of GM's minds, what you're doing is you're essentially setting up like the beach episode of the anime. You know, we're going to take a break from anything interesting, and you guys are going to screw around for an entire session or maybe a session and a half if you're really annoying, and then
Yeah.
Once I, beg you, please, can we get back to actual adventuring?
Yeah.
You're finally going to knock it off. But what this does is it turns that side activity, that beach or that potential beach episode, into essentially the adventure never stops. Yes,
Yeah.
you've come back from the dungeon, you've come back from, the war that you were fighting or whatever it was you were doing outside of town. Now you are here and you're interacting with people, and it turns out there's intrigue here too, and you're not exactly as safe as you thought you were.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
Safety, and this is true in the real world. There's nowhere is truly safe. What you have is levels of risk, basically. So yeah, being stuck underground with a bunch of like cannibal Morlocks, that's a very high risk situation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But your town might also be a little bit higher risk than you think it is.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just imagine going where I live downtown and messing with a bachelorette party and finding out that
Yeah.
hey, you messed with the wrong bachelorette party. Those woo girls, they're ninjas. I don't know.
Surprised. Yeah. Anything can happen in the world.
Yeah.
Not just in the wilds.
Right.
It can happen. And in many respects, it's more likely unexpected things. Like I actually expect a dangerous situation out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily expect it.
Oh no, I was gonna say I
should.
do expect a dangerous situation in parts of cities.
Yeah. In most of cities. Yeah. You are not always safe.
Yeah.
In town.
Yeah, when I've had conversations with people about saying, there's no danger in town, the first thing that comes to mind, I'm just like, dude, have you read or seen Batman?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, also like, towns get like pillaged routinely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
By like armies and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Cities are where people are.
And here's the thing. If it's full of intelligent monsters, you can't just keep going into a dungeon without it retaliating.
Right.
Yes.
It should retaliate.
Yeah. Yeah, and this again it's unlocking concepts that people have kind of buried away and forgotten, because there are a lot of people. This is going back to what Alchemic Raker and I were talking about last week. There are a lot of people who read the rules a certain way or had the rules explained to them a certain way, and they've kind of locked away essentially like the full spectrum of what this game can be in just their shallow understanding. People see going back to town as leaving the adventuring zone. Yeah, because that's the way that their games have been run and designed for 40 years at this point. When you give them something to do there, then you can start to rewire people's brains. You can start to get them to understand, not everything that is above ground, like anything's a dungeon. A building's a dungeon. City streets are a dungeon, but it's not even all dungeons. Like there's other things that can cause danger, other things that can cause intrigue.
Yeah,
lots
absolutely.
of things. Yeah.
And most of the things that can cause certainly intrigue are going to happen in a quote unquote safe zone. And this is actually, I have nothing against, like Appendix N as like, what would you say in RPG canon? But I think this is where some of the limitations of these old pulp or fantasy novels, you can really see the limitations. Yeah. Because a novel about pulp or high or low adventure, it is typically about an adventure, not all the times, strictly speaking, but it is a book, and a book does have a plot. That's not a knock again. A book should have a plot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
It's a non-linear book, okay?
But it is true. Conan, like a lot of these figures who we do take rightly as sort of archetypical inspiration for either player characters as such, or for people for whom the role play game dynamic is sort of happening around. There hasn't been as much exploration of the true and obvious fact that cities and the social sphere is also just as interesting as the wilderness, the dungeon, the ancient ruin of Atlantean origin.
Yeah.
And this is something where, like, again, that soap opera dynamic, a more modern television or a movie inspiration can be helpful.
Yeah,
not to
definitely
supplant or replace Appendix N or any of these great stories, but to add further depth,
right?
And
more and more
context.
things, because it's like, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think that you said that one of the inspirations for Nighthaven was not only just The Godfather, but probably something like Gangs of New York, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like
that is the movie that I was specifically just about to bring up is Goodfellas, but keep going.
Yeah, but it's like, think about Gangs of New York. This is something I want to role play in. You know, where it's like you've got these literal gangs fighting over territory, and it's not just about, oh yeah, we're gonna go kill them or whatever. It's like they all have ideas and ideals. Like Bill the Butcher is not just a thug. He really has
a very clear vision for
what, and it's such an interesting movie, and it's like that's the kind of thing that I like to do and want to do in role-playing games.
Yeah, and I bring up Goodfellas as an example because in Goodfellas you have that intrigue, and then you have moments of violence that pop off related to people running into each other.
Yeah.
You also have the concept of someone leveling up throughout the movie Goodfellas. But,
sure.
And then not actually leveling up.
Yes. But the thing that a lot of Appendix N is missing, and I don't remember if the book I'm about to bring up is actually part of Appendix N or not. I don't think it is. A lot of the Appendix N material is made up of short stories that are very loosely connected by characters that pop up in multiple stories. So like there's not that kind of binding structure like you find in a novel.
Right.
But
or even the binding structure of a player character over a long campaign.
Yeah. But one book that does mix the adventure and the, you're going out into the wilderness, the danger zone with the intrigue very well is Dune. And I think Dune is, it can be a skeleton key that unlocks these concepts for people who aren't sure how to blend that intrigue with the adventure side of things. Because yes, you do have, Paul running around in the desert with the Fremen, but you also have the machinations of the Harkonnens, and you've got all of the plans within plans that are being built, and these things affect each other and kind of build off of one another. And so if you take a look at a work like Dune and realize that you can do this in D&D, even on a small scale, it doesn't have to be, nobles fighting over like the Imperium of planets or anything. Like you can do this in a city, in a brothel, and it still works the same way.
Yeah. 100%. The scale is different, but it's that all of that. Especially you can see in Dune, all of that comes down to personal hatreds between several, like a few key characters.
Yeah.
yes, you have the armies of the Harkonnens coming in and wiping out the Atreides armies and things like that, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is Baron Harkonnen and Leto Atreides and the personalities. So yeah, I 100% agree with that, and that's why I think that all these games should be based, at least the best games, the games that I like to play in and to run, are based on these characters and these larger than life figures.
Now, this raises an interesting question, because when you hear a lot of people shy away from GMing or shying away from designing, one of the first things you hear is, I'm not good at creating scenarios, or I'm not good at coming up with cool plots. And we recognize this is kind of a false objection, because that's not what you're supposed to do. What is the difference? Let's kind of explore the difference between coming up with a scenario or a plot that players would have to run through versus coming up with characters that are interesting and have strong motivations, all interacting within a confined space. It's a challenge still, but I think it's a different kind of challenge. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
It's a different kind of challenge, but this was something we learned while writing this, because we got ourselves in one instance like written into a corner with a couple of characters, because we had come up with an idea that it should have immediately been apparent that it made no sense. But once it came time to like, okay, now let's work on this one prostitute, and started working on it, we're like, holy shit, like this doesn't make any sense. How can we do this? And we were coming up with like, okay, we could do this and this and this, and it was coming like wheels within wheels within
we were
wheels.
making it more complicated.
It's becoming more complicated, and like we were kind of like, let's just scrap all of that. Like, let's just make this like the most petty high school thing that we possibly can. And that actually was kind of like a big light bulb in a key, is that a lot of drama can come out of, and I'm not saying this in necessarily just the theatrical sense, but a lot of action and things can come out of really basic things like jealousy, pettiness, hatred, someone just flying off the handle. It's like these small things that happen in your everyday life. When you just bring that up to being with larger than life characters, the consequences are larger than life.
Right.
Yes.
And so it's like, if you're focusing on characters, don't give them some super complicated scheme or motivation. They can be scheming or whatever, but keep it simple and keep the motivation. Just think about all the backstabbing and the dumb stuff that happens in high school, and turn that into something in your fantasy world, and it'll be awesome. And
this is also something that, I mean, we knew this already, but this isn't something we realize. It's like the reason it makes sense isn't because of its utility per se, although it is a very helpful tool to come back to, but that is how the real world works. For all of the complexity of the world we live in, anyone who's an adult, anyone who's worked at a job, in any sector, these things never change. The emotional impulses we all have are the drivers of so many things that are from the small scale to the much, much, much wider and encompassing.
And I will also say, so this will sound kind of corny, but there is Steve Jobs. There's a lot of really good clips of him out there, and he says some things that really, really make sense. And one of them is that, like, when you realize that the world was not built by people that are any smarter than you, like, you realize that's kind of like, okay, anything's open. And with some exceptions, people like McCrease or Gygax, most of the games out there are not made by people who are more creative than you or smarter than you or anything. And so it's like, do not be afraid to start and to make these things.
And when it comes specifically to crafting these motivations, I think what a lot of it comes down to is understanding what lies at the root of really any struggle between factions. It's about power. So understanding what power means in your like your given area, within a city, within a brothel, within a kingdom, whatever scale you're playing at. What does power look like? Who has it currently? Who wants it? And how are they planning to get it? Are they, planning through brute strength, through trickery? Are they trying to cozy up to power? Are they trying to eliminate, give yourself a starting point. What does power mean in this context that you're creating, and who currently has it, and then decide who wants it, why do they want it,
everybody.
and how are they going to get it?
Yeah. And also, an additional layer that you can take, because you're completely right. That is a great way to look at so much of world building from this kind of perspective. But you do this a couple of times, or you think about it for a little while. It's pretty easy to sort of add on complexity in a good way. So for example, this character, this crime lord, or what have you, he because of his background, let's say he has a certain kind of personality, right? And he has power over a gang. That's sort of his faction. So that implies a certain kind of power. But let's say there's a rivalry between this character and another, a business owner, let's say. And let's say this business owner is, an abusive husband to this character's sister, or this crime boss character, he has an unrequited love. He knew this guy's wife from high school, and it didn't work out. Maybe she jilted him, or vice versa, or what have you. Not only what power, what force do I have to bring to bear, but what is my personal animus against this other guy? Again, Baron Harkonnen and Leto Atreides. Yep. The Harkonnen army, the Harkonnen industrial power base has certain capabilities, but I, Baron, Vladimir Harkonnen, have a very particular attitude towards my cousin Duke Leto Atreides. Right.
Yep. Or to frame it with another analogy, what is your relationship to Marcellus Wallace?
A good question.
Yeah.
Yes.
How have you interacted with Marcellus Wallace over the course of 24 hours, basically?
Yeah.
But we got a $10 super chat here from Tag 1080. Thank you for bringing us the useful stuff out of the theater kid side of the hobby. Got to remind the gross nerds how meaningful social situations work. And this super chat, snarky as it may be towards the gross nerds, who are indeed gross and nerdy,
and deserving of all.
Yes. There is an aspect to this. We're talking about social dynamics, and unfortunately, there are a lot of people who don't understand those anymore. Bowling alone applies so heavily to the current society that we live in. A lot of people have kind of forgotten what meaningful interpersonal social dynamics look like, and how those play out in the real world. Now, in most of your lives, no one is going to be trying to assassinate you so that they can take over your criminal enterprise, or you're not going to be marching on a rival kingdom anytime soon. But you see these things play out again at a different scale, as we've talked about multiple times tonight. It's a matter of scale. You've seen these things play out in different scales where people have teamed up against other people. They backstabbed other people. There's stuff like this at my current job right now that I'm experiencing.
Every job. And that is another great place to draw from for this sort of material and these sort of relationships.
Think about your job.
Think about the worst job you've ever had, and that's a campaign. The seeds of it, the seeds of something are there.
Yeah, absolutely. And this gets back to something that Chuck Dixon talked about. It was either last week or 2 weeks ago in one of his YouTube videos. He didn't go to school for writing. After high school, he worked a series of what he called donkey jobs, which were just driving an ice cream truck, being a janitor at a TV station, just all kinds of different odd jobs that he did all throughout his late teens, early 20s, up until he got his first writing gig in his early 30s. And he said that doing those jobs taught him so much about other people's experiences just through talking to people that he ran into. He could hear stories of how other people's lives went, or other things that they did, or dynamics that he encountered in these different odd jobs that he took on. So that once he was given his first writing assignment, once Larry Hama took a chance on him and gave him Savage Sword of Conan, he had this kind of wealth of experience to look back on and to influence his work. And so people who think that they don't live interesting lives, people who are stuck in this kind of Walter Mitty mindset, you need to break yourself out of that and realize yes, you are not Conan the Barbarian or Solomon Kane, but you could take an experience in your life and just kind of turn a couple dials and essentially have a Solomon Kane type situation that you might deal with.
And the other thing is, your distant relative, Robert E. Howard, was also not Conan.
Right.
Yeah.
He wasn't Conan, but he created Conan. You don't have to be the thing that you create, Yep. You probably shouldn't be.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was about to say, not everyone can be Frank Dukes, but even Frank Dukes isn't Frank Dukes. So, but yeah.
I mean, there's interesting things going on in the world. In even the most banal places. And that's not to sound like, sort of like a saccharine platitude. It really is the case, because wherever there are people, the social dynamics exist. Yeah. And again, the social dynamics that are evocative and memorable in stories, they are fractally present in any level of social interaction to varying degrees, but they're all there, right? We all have jobs, right? We've all gone to school.
Yeah, and I got to say, K Dolo in the chat is saying BLG clearly doesn't know who Frank Dukes is. I don't, so he accurately identified that.
Have you seen the movie Bloodsport?
No.
So there's a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, Bloodsport.
I have probably seen Bloodsport. Yes, yeah, it just clicked immediately.
The Kumite, that's Bloodsport.
Okay.
So Frank Dukes is a real person, in that he actually exists. He was in the military shortly after the Vietnam War, and he has studied some kind of martial arts. But when Frank Dukes tells his story, he was a Black Ops Mac VSOG super soldier that single-handedly fought the Viet Cong to a standstill, and then continued going on secret missions for the CIA throughout the whole rest of the 70s and 80s. And then he entered a real kumite where he fought like 1,000 people and won or something like that, and they were all death matches.
This guy sounds pretty badass.
Yeah, he's made a living out of writing fan fiction about himself.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Nice.
The Neil Breen of our time.
Yes. As K Dolo says, he is Steven Seagal, but not as famous.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yep.
Your reference makes way more sense now. I'm sorry that I'm illiterate.
Who did you say the guy was who inspired Roadhouse?
Oh, yeah. Have you seen Roadhouse?
The original?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. It's one of the greatest movies ever.
It is.
That's based off a true story.
I did not know that.
It's like there was some billionaire who basically had free reign to do, or like probably millionaire in the 80s, to do free reign to whatever he wanted. Like the cops were all on his payroll, like everything, and he just disappeared one time. And basically, it's the town killed him, and the cops were like, didn't see that. Didn't see that. So Roadhouse is a documentary, is all I'm saying. And it is one of my favorite movies. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm. And it turns out that there are multiple Baron Munchausen's that exist in our modern world. And one of the interesting ways that you can add some flavor into a campaign is to inject one of these kind of Baron Munchausen, Frank Dukes, Ashita Kim type characters into your event. Like that's classic. You find that even in a lot of video games where you'll encounter that NPC who claims that oh yes, I'm the greatest swordsman in the world. You probably wouldn't want to cross blades with me. Anyways, can you help me with this problem that I'm having?
Yeah.
I'm the last. I'm the last of the only old gunslinger in the West. I took on all comers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But then again, maybe he's not lying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the great thing about the RPGs. Yeah, you can throw in someone like that.
Yeah.
We have a character like that in the Shucked Oyster. It's Gaston the Righteous.
Gaston the Righteous.
Yeah, he's a man of great character and his trusty friend, Coward's
and
Bane.
Reasonable standards.
Yeah, very reasonable standards.
Is he an adherent to Neo-Gastonism?
He's like because people asked us, did you base this off of Gaston from Beauty and the Beast? And really, no, because he's so much better than
he's so much better than Gaston. For one, he didn't die to a monster.
And for anyone unfamiliar, Neo-Gastonism has 3 tenets: don't let women read, eat lots of eggs, and beat up furries.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. Our players, when they encountered Gaston, one of the female characters did not have a high enough charisma score to be worthy of his notice, and was very upset with that. The player was very upset with that, and so then they're like, okay, no, we got to get this guy. They're like, what should we do? Well, his name's Gaston. Let's bring him a giant bucket of eggs. So they bring in this like giant bucket of eggs, and then they tried to steal his sword, and then one of them got it planted in their face and died.
The thing is,
it was awesome.
They successfully stole the sword for about
5 minutes.
Yeah, like maybe more like 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let him on a chase, and
Gaston
then he
won.
nearly beat the guy to death.
He killed him with his bare hands.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He punched him to death.
Well, he knocked him. Yeah, he knocked him down unconscious.
Oh yeah, that's right. And then he got
recovered Coward's Bane, and then stabbed him in the face with it. So that was the first time that we got to use the tampering with mortality table in Axe.
Liars are not masculine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that one story that you guys told was the result of one botched charisma check, basically.
Yeah.
Well, and they could have let it go.
Yeah.
But they could have. But that was the first moment we were like, holy shit, it's working. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. People people who have not tried this play style don't realize the power of it. You can't you can't plan something like that. If you tried to plan something like that, people would read it and be like, "You're absolutely insane."
I couldn't have planned anything.
That was one of the best moments of the game so far.
It was
because
so funny.
This character has been put over as being gorgeous and beautiful, and does have a very high charisma
score.
And she opened the door to try and talk to him, and Gaston opened the door. He says, "No." And she
closes the door.
What?
She's like, "What?" Yeah. So that was the first time that player got interested in downtime activities. She's trying to like research spells to see if she can raise her charisma score and like.
Why doesn't he notice me?
Man, from Gaston's perspective, his sword was stolen and he was led on a chase throughout town, all because a woman he didn't know wanted attention.
Yeah. Well,
many such cases.
Morgana is the most toxic female that you could.
Yeah.
She's pretty bad. I would have given that to Svetlana,
but
except that they killed Svetlana and dismembered her and harvested her for her monster parts. So,
as the case may be.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's again just to tie everything kind of back together. You know, this is the kind of play style that I think the future of RPGs needs to be built around. Just this.
Oh yeah.
Here are all of these dominoes I've set up in various patterns.
Yeah.
And watch what happens when you start knocking them over accidentally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the real fun, like the really, really good stuff happens when the players start doing things that you couldn't have accounted for.
Yeah.
And just because then the dominoes start falling in ways that you couldn't have predicted. It's so awesome.
Yeah. And this is another thing where it's like you know, similarly to how people can get bent out of shape saying, well, I can't write a scenario well. I can't do encounter design well. Or, well, I can't write a plot or a story well. You know, to your point about this being sort of the future of any sort of memorable or lasting, impactful role-playing game, it's 100% the truth, because the fact of the matter is typical modules are not sort of forgettable or have a limited lifespan necessarily because of the lack of the writing per se, because there are adventure paths, there are modules, there are supplements that actually do have very, very good writing, very evocative writing. And from a narrative perspective, from a plot perspective, the events from A to Z do make sense. It's not that they don't make sense. Some of them are trash, of course, but it's not that we haven't hit, the inflection point with regards to like plot quality or writing quality. We have hit that many, 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 many times. It's just the truth of the medium that a plot, no matter how well written, you could plot out Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Lord of the Rings is an amazing and timeless story. It is a terrible role-playing game. It is an amazing piece of the Western canon from a story perspective. Yeah. Even the Dragonlance novels are good. They make sense. The characters are interesting and memorable. But going through the War of the Lance is not the way you should be approaching it. Not because Raistlin isn't cool or Caramon isn't brave, right?
Because they are.
They are, but they're not player characters.
Right. And if you're using dice, that's going to blow up any sort of predictable path. Even if everybody wants to tell a story, the fact that, well, I rolled a nat 1, well, I rolled a nat 20. Well, you're not supposed to here. Well, I mean, there are... Yeah, what? You're
supposed to find the tracks to get to the next area.
Right, exactly.
Right. So it really does have to be this way for something that
worth playing.
Well, something worth playing. And the reason it's going to be worth playing is like you have a thing called role-playing games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I have my module, or I have my design, my vision, and it's coming at it from this sort of plot ABC stance. Well, is the linear plot or the node-based plot mapping well with the reality of the action that I'm doing? The fact of the matter is it's not. Is there some overlap? Yes, of course, but not enough to prevent you from having continual and like perennial problems that we're still talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just as a quick aside here, real quick, I am being informed by people in chat and by the window that I have open that you guys have hit $10,000. So you are now funded as of right now.
Hell yeah.
400. Nice. Thank you,
boys.
Everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
All 261 of you.
Absolutely.
And you are going to get something super awesome from this. It is so much fun. And here's the thing as well. Our players have completed the dungeons, and they've basically, like, the big ticket things in the module have been completed, so to speak.
Yeah,
like
it's
not
nowhere near over. They haven't scratched the surface, and now there's all sorts of other crazy shit happening. They think they're caught in a time loop because a character that they ignored, and I'm positive they don't even remember bumping into this person, is out doing things.
Yeah.
Awesome. So this thing has longevity, replayability as well. If you want to run it for multiple groups, it's gonna be different. Every time. It's so great. I'm so proud of this thing.
Yeah.
Now we've got one more question here, and I think this will be the last question for the evening, because you guys have been streaming for a majority of the day.
A long time.
We're going to close this out with a question from Tag 1080 here. Do you think these interactions gain or lose any impact if the players don't know the root personality you are using for the NPC? So you guys take that first, and then I'll add my 2 cents to it as well.
If I'm understanding the question correctly, I would say no. If I'm a player and I don't know sort of the inspiration that, in the case of the Shucked Oyster, the writers are using, or in the case of the GM, who and how I'm portraying. Well, that's how the real world is like, right? Yeah. I meet someone for the first time, or I meet someone for, the fourth time. I continue to get to know someone the more that I speak to them, but I don't have an archetypical baseline to, like, I don't have an internal, like, Jungian Rolodex, at hand. Like, I don't, that's not in the human perception.
Yeah. I think it's fine. I think it's more fun that way, honestly, if they don't know. Yeah. We got the names of the characters tell you quite a bit about them in some cases in this module, because it is a very much more surreal and bizarre thing than real life. It's not gonzo at all, but it's very surreal. But you don't need to know anything about these people. It's better, I think, when you don't, because you get to discover that and discover what the personality and the archetype is over time. And that is kind of its own reward.
Yeah. And I would say also, like, from the GM perspective, conversely, like, if you're worried as a GM, let's say, portraying these characters, we have given considerable word count to these NPCs. These are not just stat blocks with like a paragraph or 2 paragraph.
Each of the patrons has many pages associated with them, and this is not useless backstory stuff.
Yeah,
you get a little bit of information on their history, so to speak, but it's very much more, what are their goals, what do they believe, who do they like and who do they hate, and what what is their personality, and
who are they? How do they
yeah.
act? What do they want right now?
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And whether we're talking specifically about the Shucked Oyster, which you guys have done that work to give people enough to run these NPCs or these patrons, however they decide to run it. But also, it doesn't matter. Like you said, it doesn't matter if the players don't know that the dwarf at the bar is based on Jesse Ventura. If they start talking to him, he's going to talk to them for the next 3 hours about how the king was assassinated by a crossbowman on a grassy knoll and the city guard are covering it up.
Yeah.
And they'll just have to interact with that as it is.
Yeah. And it's better that they don't know, like, you're basing the character based off of Jesse Ventura, because if they do know that, the character has been destroyed and they're talking to Jesse Ventura now, and they want to just meme it now.
Right.
And I've seen that happen 2 times. I have never done that. I know that's a bad idea, but every single time it happens, you go for the larger than life personality who's like clearly a 1-to-1 with down to the most minute mannerism that you can sort of emote. I'm not talking to a character in the world anymore. I'm talking to
a reference.
Yeah.
And Rex Teal in the chat is saying, as a playtester who's playing the Shucked Oyster, it's an easy no. We didn't know anything about the NPCs at all, and they were immediately engaging, which is also validating and good to hear. Thank you very much, Rex.
Thank you, man.
So one more time, and I'll bring this up here so that people can see it in all of its glory. Remind everyone that you have the next 30 days to back this campaign, The Shucked Oyster, a cursed brothel for ShadowDark RPG. I'm going to drop the link here in chat one more time. I will pin it in the comment beneath this episode. And jump on it. There's all kinds of tiers that you can go for. There's a digital PDF tier.
Stretch goals added as well.
Stretch goals. And just a quick...
which one of them is fulfilled now that we hit 10K?
That is true.
Yeah.
Our first stretch goal. We're going to have an additional wilderness encounter table. If you were worried about being able to escape the orbit of the oyster, now you can't.
Now you cannot.
And just for a reminder for the people who are not in our launch party stream, the book is written. So as soon as the campaign is over, the digital rewards go out immediately.
Yeah. Once it's once the payment process.
Once the
So
money
about
clears.
6 weeks from now.
Yeah.
You'll have the version of the PDF that we have right now. You'll get that, and then if there's additional, like we just got a stretch goal content, and also additional backer content, like there's an add-on. I think they're all gone now, for people to have their character included as a member of a rival adventuring party, things like that. Those will come later as updates to that PDF. So you'll be getting those as they're added, and the physical rewards until everything is fully locked down and we get proof copies that we are happy with. We won't release those until quite a bit later. So probably like a couple months, but we're giving ourselves a pretty significant buffer on that.
Yeah. But it's not like this isn't like 6 months. I think we said like November on the campaign.
Yeah, I think
so
we
that'll
said
be
November,
like,
but it's definitely you will be able to play this in 6 weeks.
Yeah, but you don't need to wait for us to write this book.
Right.
It's already done.
Yes, correct.
Yep. Cool. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, man.
And congratulations on a already wildly successful campaign.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And everybody out there, you can look forward to we did interview both Ryan and Wonky at North Texas RPG Con. And then we just got caught up with preparing for the Kickstarter and weren't able to edit that.
But now the Kickstarter is over, and this is it's
so you're gonna get
we beat the goal. So
yeah, you're gonna get
that out there.
Content.
These are 2 guys who make great shit and are very passionate about what they do.
Yeah.
And they should be, and you should be too.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, guys, that is going to be it for Rollin Bones this week. Next week, we will be back, and I will have, for the first time on here, Blake DeRusha. He is the director and cinematographer of a forthcoming documentary called 50 Years of Fantasy. It is a documentary celebrating, like it says, 50 years of D&D. You know, doing the kind of work that WotC has not done this year at all. So I'm looking. I'm looking forward to talking to Blake and hearing about the interviews that he talked, that he got at Gen Con, the people he's interviewed so far, hearing a little bit about his campaign for his documentary. So I'm looking forward to that. And once again, I want to remind everyone, in 2 weeks, on August the 20th, Jeffrey Talanian will be back here on Rollin Bones.
Nice.
And I am giving you all advance notice because there will be a signed reading for this episode. We are going to be talking.
No freeloaders.
Yeah. Do your homework.
We're going to be talking about Clark Ashton Smith and his impact on D&D, and we'll be doing that specifically with the stories: The Devotee of Evil, The Flower Women, The Satyr, Mother of Toads, The Charnel God, The Isle of the Tortures, The Tales of Stompra Zeros, and The Seven Geeses. So read those in advance. I will be reading those in advance. Jeff has read them probably 20 times, knowing how much of a Smith fanatic he is. And that's what we'll be discussing in 2 weeks. So Blake DeRusha next week, Jeff Talanian in 2 weeks, and till next time, whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I'm so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I will see you guys next time.